Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Mich Hamlin here with me today. How you doing, Mitch?
Doing well, Cedric. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm happy to have you here today, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just now tuning in, uh, I would love for you to pay attention tonight because this man has important American story. His story is very inspirational. And I definitely think that there will be something here for all of us. Hello to you if you're tuning in on Roku TV, Apple TV, Android TV, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire. I really, really appreciate you. Feel free to drop comments in the comment box and put your reactions in the chat. An emoji or a question will do just fine. Without further ado, Mitch, where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from Southern California.
Okay. Is that where you were born?
Yeah, I was born down in Santa Ana, and then I grew up in the little bit north of that, the Pomona, Montclair area.
Okay. Now, what did it look like and feel like for you growing up in that area? Talk to us about what it was like.
Yeah, well, a lot of what I remember growing up is, being always being with my family, and I have two other brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, and a mom and a dad, and we grew up on the streets of Pomona in shelters because we really couldn't we didn't have stable housing. We lived, park to park while we were in Pomona, and then my two parents had disputes and they separated for a while. And it was like at that point we started staying local at off of it's like Second Street in Gary in a shelter in Pomona.
Well, right away, you're going through a lot. Your whole family's going through a lot.
Yeah. And that's like as early as I can remember back.
Did you ever find out anything about your family's history? Like, why were your parents going through what they were going through, which led to you all living on the streets? Like, when you first begin to talk about your childhood, you're already talking about living on the streets. So,
Yeah.
like, were you ever able to go back and do some research and find out what it is that your parents were dealing with?
Not really. I know my dad has family down in Garden Grove that work on cars apparently, and that's the extent of it.
Wow. Do you ever feel like you want to know more about your father's side of the family?
There's times when you wonder, is there anyone out there relative wise, if there's any nieces, nephews, or um, uncles and aunts, but sometimes no. Like we grew up that way, and we didn't really have anyone around us besides each other. So my mindset was never, who else can there be?
Right. That's right. I've had conversations with people close to me, and one of those people said, "You know what, Cedric? You can't miss what you never had." And that really resonated with me then, and it resonates a lot in this conversation. You sometimes you don't think about what you don't have. It's just almost like an automatic response that you live the life that you have, and you don't always wonder about the parts that are missing. So I can identify with that. Now, do you know much of your mother's side of the family, or is it the same story there?
Yeah, her side, she was apparently she was married before she was married to my dad, and that marriage wasn't going well. And then she ended up meeting my dad and divorcing her previous marriage to get into that relationship with my dad.
Okay.
And that's like the extent of it that from that end also.
Well, yeah. Wow. You have siblings?
Yeah, I have two siblings, an older and a younger.
Okay. What was it like for you being a middle child while you all were going through all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I was a mama's boy. My older brother was a daddy's boy, so he was always around my dad, and I went the opposite way and was always around my mom.
Mm.
And whenever we would walk anywhere, I'd always be with her. Whenever we would go to the grocery stores, I'd always be with her. Um, so I just modeled after kind of what I was taught from her.
Yeah. What were some of the characteristics about your mom that really stuck with you and really stick with you to this day?
She was hardworking.
Mhm.
As we'll talk about, she did everything she could for us, and like I couldn't ask for more,
Wow.
given our circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So, they weren't the best at saving or spending wisely with the money that they were making, but they worked hard for it. And then
Right.
they worked hard for it, after then those decisions they made down the line is kind of what led us into our position.
Okay. So even though you all were moving around, you saw them actually making money, actually working to make ends meet.
Yeah, they each had jobs.
Okay.
At certain points, my dad was working at a liquor store. He was working at sheet metal shops, and he eventually started. He had like his bike, and he'd push his bike around with stuff to wash cars, like a
Mhm.
bucket and soap and sponges and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Hustling. Hustling. That's what we call
yeah,
it. Okay.
so
So
they
now,
they both hustled. Yeah,
what was elementary school like for you?
yeah. Elementary school was a shocker because the three of us, we always stay together. And
Yeah.
so I had my older brother's older by 1 year, and my younger brother is younger by 4 years. So my older brother and I were always in the same school, and we always knew what was going on with the two of us. And so our younger brother we didn't see often. Our older brother, my older brother, he ended up excelling very well in like reading and history, and then I started excelling in math. Um, but what was difficult was we wore the same clothes every day. Like we didn't know different. We would wake up, put on the same clothes when we would leave the shelter, and then we would all walk down like 5 blocks to school before, and then we'd show up to school and they would feed us, and
Yeah.
we'd get picked on at school. But when you're a kid, you really don't know. At least I didn't know what they were talking about or anything. Like, you were in the same clothes as yesterday, and it's like, well, like, what
Right.
else am I supposed to do?
Right. That's what I have.
Yeah,
Right.
that's all we had was the clothes that we had on our back. Because at shelters, they don't have storage units. They don't have rooms for you. You're just sleeping on a floor that's a big wide open space, and you have a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
shower, and then after the shower, like, you have the clothes you were wearing before.
Other kids, a lot of the other kids could not fathom what you were actually living like outside of school. And I mean that speaks toward how extraordinary of a journey that you've been on. That you lived in an age where your peers, they really couldn't recognize homelessness. They couldn't recognize the hustle that it took for you and your family to leave the shelter and get to school and just come to school on a regular basis. They had no idea. All they could see was that you were wearing the same clothes every day. Um, but it sounds like you were also academically talented. Like you weren't thinking about the fact that you were wearing the same clothes every day. It seems like you were kind of just tuned into what was going on, and that was school at the time.
Yeah, I was there. I was there to play sports, man. It was like that's all we knew. We grew up with two brothers, and so the only thing you have to do is wrestle with each other,
Right.
play sports together. And so the best part of school was like after lunch, because after you eat, like, it's a meal that we don't normally would get. So we
Right.
got to eat during the weekdays, and then we got to play afterwards. So it's
Right.
just something we were just accustomed to.
So your thoughts about school were a little bit different. You're like, I'm going to eat today. I'm going to socialize today. I'm going to learn. I'm going to play sports. I'm going to have recess, and then I'm going to come back and do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How early did you begin to play sports?
Um, we were always active kids. We always we were always at the parks. That was like our second home.
Right.
If we
What
weren't at
game?
the shelter, we were
What,
at the.
what types? What types of games did you all play?
We played football, basketball, um, soccer, baseball.
Right. Active. Active. Now, did this stuff come naturally to you guys, or did your dad or other kids who taught you guys how to play these sports, or did it just kind of come naturally?
No, it was our dad. He used to be a big sports fanatic. He was like he loved the Raiders and the Vikings for football, and then baseball. He was a huge Los Angeles Angels fan, Anaheim Angels fan, and then basketball was a Lakers fan. So he always had sports stuff with him because one of his side hustles was selling sports equipment at like soccer games. He was that dude trying to sell soccer balls.
Yeah.
At like youth or there's the city has their basketball tournaments where it's like little kids are playing basketball. He'd be trying to sell basketballs, and so we always had access to sporting equipment. And that's here kids go play, and I'll be over here like trying to hustle out so we can actually eat tonight.
Yeah, I was wondering if that ever rubbed off on you in a way that you were trying to make money at a young age. Did you ever try to make money yourself? Like, did you ever start to hustle as a kid?
Well, as we transitioned out of the shelter, and that was like in Pomona, we went more eastward out of the city into Montclair, where my dad started his own like little car wash thing. And we found out that there was a local car wash, and they had vacuums that a car wash has vacuums so people can suck up like the debris in their cars.
Mm-hmm.
And there's little bins at the bottom of the bins. And when you open those bins, there's actually coins in there. Like if you accidentally suck up a nickel or a quarter and you're like, oh, I'm never going to get that quarter back. I got it. Like I went through all the dust and the hair and everything people suck up through the vacuums. And we were just picking out coins, and we'd go wash them in the restroom. And that was our side thing.
Actually, a good idea. How much money would you say you guys were uncovering? Was it like we hit the jackpot?
There were days like weekends. Weekends are the big days. Mainly weekends, but it was $10, $15, and it was enough. It was enough for our parents to say like, "Hey, give me the money," and then that's when they would turn around and not spend it so wisely.
When you see this is where the story gets a little bit more interesting, because you and your brother, at least your older brother, and you are able to see what's going on. Like
mm-hmm.
you feel the need, and that's why you're collecting the money, because you feel the need. But when you see your parents take the money and spend it however they spend it, now you become a different type of observer in the whole scenario. Did you ever find out what your parents were taking your money for?
Yeah, most of the time they would take it and they would just alcohol with it. No matter the time of the day, they always had access to it.
Mm-hmm. You broke up a little bit. You said they bought what with it?
Yeah, they were buying alcohol and cigarettes.
Okay, got you. Now they're taking your money. You're realizing, wow, I was possibly going to use that money for pizza or something else. But my parents are partying with my money. Were there nights where you and your brothers didn't eat, or did you guys still eat properly during that time?
No, yeah, exactly what you said. There were nights when we didn't eat, and so eventually the school caught on that kids wear the same clothes, and we don't even know if they're eating over the weekends. So they had this backpack program where they would give us a backpack full of non-perishables, and we would take it home and we'd bring it back on Monday, and they would give us a whole new set of food for the weekends.
And eventually they were able to see that you guys actually needed this stuff every weekend.
Yeah, we used to thrift shop, and I know it's like the popular thing to do now, but when you're like, when I was in 4th, 5th grade, I was wearing, double XL shirts to school.
Yeah.
Because they were cheap,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Thinking it was a nice shirt too, right?
Yeah. I had like one of the youngest photos I have of myself is me in a tie-dye shirt that's like too big for me in a school photo.
You know what? Hey, everybody. I am dealing with a sore throat and a cough tonight, but I almost burst out laughing just now that he was wearing the 2X and 3X tie-dye shirt on a school picture. I had one of those tie-dye shirts when I was real young as well. I don't know if I wore it for a school picture though. I can totally relate to what you're saying. You're thinking it's a nice shirt, it's 3X, and the adults are looking at you I'm talking about your teacher, maybe the principal, counselors, and they're looking at you and they're saying, he's wearing the same clothes until he pops up with this size 3X tie-dye shirt. He
Yeah.
needs a goodie bag every week. I wonder if everything's okay with him. So did the social workers start coming to your house? Like, how did you guys begin to transition into the system?
Yeah, well, we eventually transitioned from the shelter into Montclair, and then in Montclair we were living in the parks, and so we'd sleep in like baseball dugouts, on the bleachers, by trees, and so we'd wake up at like 2 in the morning and block off the sprinklers so they wouldn't hit like our mom and our younger brother while they were sleeping, and then we would transition actually into a car, and there was five of us sleeping in like this Oldsmobile, like a 1987 Oldsmobile, and one of us was sleeping on the floor, like where your feet go for the passenger in the rear seat one, and the other two were sleeping on the back seating cushion, and then my parents were in the front. And then the school started to notice and they'd ask us questions like, "Hey, so where are you guys staying?" Because in order to be registered in school, you have to have a housing address.
That's right.
So the only thing we would say was, "Yeah, we live on Stone Ridge Court." And that was one of my dad's friends who let him use their address as our address. So they thought we had somewhere to live and we were just wearing the same clothes every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get some hearts, some likes in the building. We have ourselves a show here tonight. He's a kid. His brothers are on this journey with him. His whole family sleeping in a car, sleeping in a dugout at the park. This was his life before he ever really had a chance to stand and feel safe and feel stable and able to function at the highest level possible. He was sleeping in a car with his entire family. Somebody out there, share this episode, get somebody else into the building, because this is a powerful story tonight. I'm getting a lot out of it. So did you ever begin to desire a better life? Did you ever realize that your life was tough when you were sleeping in a car, or did you just think, oh, this is how life is?
Kind of both. All I knew, like you said earlier, is all I know is what's in front of me. But I started to notice my friends were getting technology, right? This was the turn of the century where people were getting cell phones. And so parents would ask us, like, what do you want? I want a cell phone.
Wow.
Cell phone.
Wow.
And it's a no, right? Like we can't afford to feed the five of us tonight. So how do you expect to have a cell phone?
Let me ask you something. What years were these when people started getting cell phones in your life?
2004 and 2005.
2004 and 2005.
Correct.
This is huge. Ladies and gentlemen, think about how quickly our lives changed, and where everybody else, let's say in the early 90s or mid 90s or even the late 90s. I mean, if you don't have a name brand pair of shoes on, or a name brand outfit, it's almost like you don't have very many other factors to look at as to whether or not you're doing good or not. But when technology started to boom, and he's talking about 2004, 2005, everybody has some sort of a cell phone, and you don't. Everybody's talking about these new game systems and this new gadget and that new gadget, and you don't have any of it. It does become a lot more clear, actually, that you're going through something. Living in a situation of near homelessness in the 2000s is different from living in a situation of homelessness in the 90s, or even before then. I think this is a great point that you're making right now. Technology sort of exposes where you are in life. It's like people judge you by which iPhone you have right now. So it's like if I pull out an Android phone, an old Android phone, you're thinking, okay, something's not right here. But just imagine what it was like for Mitch. His family doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have a cell phone, and they don't see one in sight. So, okay, you're seeing these drastic changes between what your life is like and what other people's lives are like. Who did you look up to? What did you look up to? What were your fantasies like? What did you want your life to turn into?
Well, we eventually, the school ended up having like this enough funding for after school programs, and my brothers and I were eligible for it. So our parents would pick us up later in the evening. So we actually got to have about like 2 lunches at school. So we'd have lunch with everyone else, and then the after school program, we'd actually have more food. So we ended up transitioning into that after school program, and that's kind of where like my first mentor or the first person I looked up to was established. And his name was Jason, and he was just an after school teacher who was there to help us out if we had questions on homework, if we had questions about class that day, and it basically provided a safe space for us to do our homework.
Did you have conversations with Jason about like manhood or how to grow up or adult life?
Yeah, those conversations came later. Because at this point our parents were very keyed in on having us know that watch what you say, because everyone, like, we say the wrong thing, then it's gonna blow our cover.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to have conversations with people like Jason? Did you want to tell somebody how you all were living?
Not really. It's a little embarrassing, right? To like let people know, like, oh hey, I'm living in a car, we're brushing our teeth like by a water spigot.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like you said earlier, like kids at school can catch on very easily because they were talking about TV shows that they were watching and I wasn't. I
Yeah,
was standing there. So it was like the black sheep where everyone knows what video games are out. Everyone knows what happened on, wrestling last night.
that's right.
And I'm standing there like, yeah, like I didn't even have food this morning, guys.
Wow. Whoa. Moments like those,
It
um,
humbles you.
I'm sorry.
It humbles you.
I mean, it humbles you, it emboldens you, but it also lets your peers know that Mitch is going through something. Sometimes it makes people get closer to you. Like, listen, man, I understand what you're going through. I got things happening in my house too, or sometimes it makes people make fun of you even more, and so it's a very complicated time when people are talking about how they watch WWE or WWF SmackDown last night, but you've never seen an episode of it because the truth is you're sleeping in a car. I think it gets to the point where everybody can see that you're going through something. So now, at what point did you all enter the foster care system? Did you ever enter the foster care system?
Yeah. 2005, and it was in December. And the social worker, there was actually a social worker in our life, and she would come to our car and she would take our clothes to go wash them for us and bring them back to us the next day.
Wow.
Because I guess it was becoming such a problem at school that kids were saying, hey, and teachers were noticing like they're wearing the same thing, like they need to wash their clothes or else they're not going to be able to come to class. And so the social worker stepped in at that point. That was like our first interaction with a social worker until the point where we were placed into the system.
I think that's powerful that the social worker actually started to try to help you guys out first. Like, she didn't just say, all right, that's it, we taking you guys. She actually tried to help you out first by washing your clothes. That was a powerful moment. How did your parents feel when the social worker started helping you guys out like that?
Very suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't 100% in on it.
Okay.
They rejected the offer a couple of times initially until they were said, hey, well, they're going to not be able to go to school unless we do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were in middle school in 2005, they would let us shower at school because there were showers for students who needed accommodations. Right. So as long as we were in school like 30 minutes before school actually started, we started to use the showers in school, middle school, before we actually had class.
Did you begin to see school as your way out of this life that you were living? Did you begin to see school as
no?
No? What were you thinking about school, given that this was where you were eating, this is where you were showering, and you had at least 5 more years of school left. What were your thoughts about school at this time?
Yeah, the thoughts were just to have fun. It
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't to build a future, it wasn't to build a foundation, it wasn't to read the book, it wasn't to finish homework. It was just we were just there, and our purpose there was to, get as much out of it as we could.
Yeah. See, when people talk about resilience, they're talking about people like you, Mitch, people who, when you're going through what other people describe as a tough time, you're just in the middle of all of it, having fun, not even being too serious, just living life, having a great time, trying to make each day a great day. That is a type of resilience that can't be taught, and I think it identifies you as a special person. So now, talk to me about what high school was like for you. What was going on in your world?
Yeah, we transitioned into foster care in 2005. We were placed, the three of us actually, in the same house, which is not very common that three kids, brothers, actually stay in the same household. We transitioned to a home in Fontana for 4 or 5 months. And then when we went to high school, we actually transitioned into another home back in our hometown of Montclair, or the town we were sleeping in the parks and stuff. So we identified closely to that city. So they actually found a house for us, the three of us there. And that's when we started high school.
Nice. Did you feel like you had a fresh start going into high school?
No, our mom had passed away months in. As soon as we got into the system, she had passed away. And so it was very confusing of, I have to listen to these people, but I'm going through, like, my foundation was being broken, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you lose one of your parents, and the one that you identify closely with.
Yeah.
And you just the only thing you process is like all the struggles that you've been through with them.
That's right.
And now you realize that your brothers are the only one that you have left to turn to.
That's right. It's almost like now that your mother's gone, your brothers are the only ones who really understand the journey.
Exactly.
One last question before we go to break. When you lost your mother while you were in foster care, did that make you angry?
I was confused because, we were taken from her, and then she passes. And it's confusing because, like, how much more pain do you want? How much more pain were we meant to suffer, right? How much more hurt did we have to go through? Because they had already done so much from pulling us away from them.
That's right. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Mich Hamlin, and he has been through a lot, and we have more to talk about his triumph and other events in his life. So you guys sit tight. We'll be right back after this brief message. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Mitch, how you feeling out there?
Doing great, Cedric. Are you
All
feeling
right.
good?
Yeah, I'm all right. Working through it. I really appreciate all the comments that we have coming into the building. You guys hit that like button, hit that love button, and let us know that you're in here with us today because this is a very powerful story. Now, you're feeling confused, and were you also depressed? Did you have anxiety or stress? Because obviously, you've got to figure out how to graduate high school. Your mother's passed away. You're in foster care, which is a new thing for you. Talk about it.
Yeah, I ended up channeling a lot of the energy that I had back into the one thing that we always did, which was sports. And I found my way into running track and field in high school and started to notice that my grades were improving along with it. And the social worker, it was coincidental that the social worker who was taking our clothes in the beginning was actually the same social worker that we had throughout the whole time we were in care.
Okay.
Yeah, and so she noticed like, hey, all of you are doing sports. You're all doing great with school while you're in sports. Like, stay in sports, please.
Right.
Because we were in a home that had 5 kids, 5 foster youth kids, and so
Okay.
we see kids transition in and out. We see kids come in and they're failing classes, they're tardy for some reason, they're not obeying, and so my parents were strict. We were always on time. We always were respectable, and we always listened to adults. And so like whenever we were told what to do, we always did it. And you know, other kids who were in the system didn't really have that from like my standpoint. And so we started to see a lot of them just fluctuate in and out of the same house.
Would you say that during this time, even though from the outside looking in, you were young, that you and your brothers understood that your lives were on the line if you didn't do what you had to do?
Definitely. And I think that's like the key reasoning behind why we listened to everything that was being told to us. We knew the second that if we didn't, they might separate us, right? That was like our worst fear, was one of us is going to get adopted and the other ones are not. One of us is going to get moved up to like San Francisco and the other ones are not. So
Mhm.
losing each other was our biggest fear. And so we knew that if we had to stay together, it was going to be because we listened and obeyed what we were being told.
That's right. You know, a lot of people say um, that it's difficult to behave. It's difficult not to lash out. It's difficult not to throw temper tantrums when things are happening in your life the way that they were happening in yours. How did you and your brothers deal with, you know, emotional anxieties? Like, what did you have a coping mechanism, or were there times where you just got upset, you know, break down crying, get into arguments? Did you have those moments?
Tackle football. That was how we dealt with
Yeah.
like that's how everyone growing up, that's how we all did it, was let's play a game of 5-on-5, right? Basketball. Let's play. And
Right.
then you would see all of us lash out. And like
Right.
that's where a lot of us, and I applaud our foster parents now that they had us out in the street playing ball until the sun went down, because that became our outlet, a healthy way to handle these emotions that you don't know how to process when you're young.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay. So now you begin to excel in high school. What are your thoughts about life? What are your thoughts about after high school? Did you plan on going to college?
I didn't. My initial thought was, how do I get a job at the mall? Where am I gonna live? Like, is Spencer's hiring? Is Zumi's hiring? That was what that's what my peers were doing, right? Everyone who was in the same house as me, they were just finding part-time jobs. And my coach in high school said, hey, there's this thing called college, and there's actually programs for foster youth, and they help subsidize and can help pay for schooling in some form or fashion. Like, you should look into it. And so after practice, her and I would sit on the computer, and we would write down the numbers, we would write down the emails of these foster youth programs at local universities. And when the time came, there were fee waivers, right, that paid for ACT, SAT, and up to 5 college applications, 5 for UC, 5 for CSU, none for private schools, or 2 private schools actually.
Okay.
And so college wasn't really in the plans initially. And then once I started to apply, and think like, well, I can actually have a better life than my parents. I don't have to live in the park. Maybe I don't have to work at the mall. Maybe I can be something better.
Wow.
When I started realizing that.
What do
Uh-huh.
you what do you say to young people who are in the foster care system or the child welfare system? They might have lived a life similar to yours. They've never really heard about college,
Yeah.
but they could use a message from you tonight. What do you say?
Education I learned the hard way through my siblings that, you can be successful without education. But if you want to better yourself in a way that's sustainable and you need the support after aging out of the system, college is a good alternative. Being able to have uh, mentors and people advise you that these are the classes you should take. This is when you should enroll. This is how financial aid works. This is how you do your taxes. Like at Cal Poly Pomona, the school I got into, that's what we did. That's what our foster youth program did. The Renaissance Scholars is they showed us this is how you save money. We did Dave Ramsey courses. We did weekends with beautification where we would go pick up trash. And so we'd volunteer our time. And, these programs really help establish a foundation for me as an adult, transitioning into an adult, because I didn't have the foster care system supporting me as they were while I was going through high school.
Let's dig deeper into some of these programs. You mentioned Renaissance Scholars. Let's start there. What is that?
Yeah, it's a foster youth program at some universities, right? And they have different names at different universities. Some are Guardian Scholars, but Cal Poly Pomona's happen to be Renaissance Scholars. And you apply to the university. You have to get into the university before you can get into these programs. And these programs are meant for foster youth who age out of the system and are looking to seek higher education. And when you're in these programs, there's criteria that you have to meet. You have to have progress reports. You have to have updated of what classes you're taking or which ones you're going to take, all these meetings. And it seems like a lot of extra work at the time, but it helps you learn how to manage your time, how to be efficient with meetings, and how to learn essential skill sets that you need to survive after college.
And what were some of the key aspects of this curriculum that stood out to you? I know you mentioned Dave Ramsey classes. Talk about some of the elements of the curriculum with the Renaissance Scholars that impacted you.
Yeah, it was big on resilience. It was big on being able to diversify yourself as a person and be open to experiences. I feel like the Dave Ramsey stuck out a lot to me because it was something new for me, right? I always had no money. And so now I'm in college. I applied for a bunch of grants, and luckily enough, I was able to get a lot of them. And so what do I do with this money, right? Like, where does it go? How do I function with it? Do I save it? Do I spend it? And, for me, that program, one of the highlights was, aside from being like a residential support, because they do give housing benefits, like you're first on the list if you're on in the Renaissance Scholars or the Guardian Scholars, you're first on the list for housing because they know you need the housing. And without the housing, like you're going to either sleep in your car, which I've had classmates, I've had colleagues, I've had other individuals who were in Renaissance Scholars who had to sleep in their cars because they couldn't get into the dorms. So I think like the housing component, the financial component, and then these courses all coincide to help develop you as a person.
Did you ever face adversity as a college student? Did you ever have trauma resurface in your life? Did you have any major adversities as a college student that you can talk about?
Well, so I flipped it, right? So I flipped it from being like, I flipped it to where how I was able to help other people, and I didn't want to let anything set me back, and so I disregarded the negatives and I focused on the positives in front of me, which were, I was able to maintain 3 jobs on campus, a full-time schedule, and being an athlete. And so, being able to time to manage my time effectively, being able to meet the people who I needed to meet in order to excel and exceed through undergrad was my cornerstone, my foundation while at Cal Poly. So adversity, I would say, it was hard, being a first generation college student, not having
Yeah,
parents to go home to who can help me, but there's resources there. There's tutors on purpose. There's programs at the university's level that are there to help you succeed in these courses, even when you feel like you're going to fail out of them.
that's right. The resilience and drive that you are describing today about the journey that you've walked is the reason why youth in the foster care system have the potential to become America's next motivators. You are a prime example of America's next motivator. You've taken your experiences, constantly use them as fuel to do bigger and better. And that, Mitch, makes you a shining example for thousands of people across the country tonight. I'm very happy about your willingness to push forward and to become a pioneer for your family, for your peers, and for people who you don't even know tonight. We've had a lot of comments in the building from Jesse Hall, from Andre Van Lund. These are people who are also America's Next Motivators who you're inspiring tonight. And so I just wanted to just say that I'm very proud of you, the decisions that you've made and the decisions that you're still making. So now, what did you major in college, and what are your goals going forward?
Well, I majored in kinesiology with an emphasis in exercise science, which is, a lot of anatomy, physiology, biology, and movement analysis of how the body works. And, being in the realm of athletics and, being an athlete, a Division II track and field athlete, I decided I wanted to stay in the realm of helping people and the human body. And, I ended up applying to a bunch of schools for physical therapy school to get my doctorate in physical therapy. And so I was accepted into USC in 2017, and then I transitioned into a doctoral program at USC.
Wow, what was that like? Did you feel like you were getting somewhere in life? Did you feel accomplished? How did you feel getting into USC?
It's mixed emotions, right? Because, I want my parents to know that I'm at this level because of them. And, hardship doesn't define that I should be knocked down off the totem pole. But it was also, it all paid off, right? All the hard work, all the late nights, all like all the trauma, all the pain, it all paid off to go through to get to this point in my life. In order to become a professional and have a career, I don't have to sleep in a park, right? I don't have to sleep in a car. I can have like a sustainable career and life.
Is there anybody that you would like to point out or say thank you to tonight?
Yeah, my high school track coach, she really pushed me to go to college. And then when I got to college, it was a whole bunch of open doors because I never rejected an opportunity, right? Hey, there's this graduation event. Do you want to work it? Okay, sure. And then I ended up working the graduation event and then ended up using that experience to run the graduation events for succeeding years, and then working into the president's office at Cal Poly. So I have a lot of mentors who've helped guide me to this point in my life.
Absolutely. Do you regularly have conversations with your brothers? What is your relationship like with them now?
Yeah, I always stay in touch with my younger brother. He was the example that I was talking about, where education is not for everyone. I pushed him to go to community college to see if he can get like a higher degree instead of a high school diploma. And so he ended up, that wasn't the path for him. And high school education was sufficient enough for him to get to where he wanted. And now he has a job that pays very well for what he does. And he actually has a house. And he's starting his own family. So I can't, I have to like step back and say, is he happy, and I have to be happy for him.
100%,
Yeah,
100%, 100%.
exactly.
I would like to acknowledge your brothers, um, and just say that you're right. College is not for everybody. Higher education is not for everybody. But when you have a certain mentality that you're going to succeed and you're going to make a way, it just becomes an admirable thing. It's admirable that your brother, without even getting a degree, has been able to get a home. He's got a career. He's starting a family. That's major. It puts you in a set of people in America who are above average. You know, just having that hustling mentality, the mentality that I'm going to make my life a success. And
Hmm.
there's different ways. There's different ways to get to that point. So much respect to your brothers and much respect to you as well. Now, do you still talk to your family, your foster family? Do you talk to any of the mentors who helped you out along the way? They must be extremely proud of you.
All the time. I always reflect on who's helped me get to these points in my life, and yeah, we ended up actually celebrating last weekend, my achievements for actually graduating from from USC with my doctorate degree in physical therapy. So now I'm like a full blown professional in the realm of physical therapy. Um, so that was a big turning stone, because leaving Cal Poly, 3% of foster youth make it out with a bachelor's degree, and
Three
so doing
percent.
3%, and then heading to a post bac doctoral program where the odds are lower than that was very scary, because you know it's not meant for someone like me, right? That was what was going through my head, was this level of education is not something I'm supposed to be able to comprehend.
That's
But
right.
as you stated, I went, was in survivor mode, and I hustled my way through it. I sat down and I was motivated, and I had the drive to just hammer out and learn as much as I could and apply as much as I could in order to get where I am now.
From homeless with your family, sleeping in a dugout, sleeping in a car, to now being in the top 3% of the country as a graduate of USC. What do you feel is next for you in life?
Well, the experiences that I've had not only have humbled me, but have given me like the ability to connect with my patients and be able to empathize with them when they're going through certain pains, right? And I use that to my advantage when I'm working with them, and increasing my ability to understand that they're having a hard time, they're going through pain, but I've also had my fair share. So I, like most people who graduate, what's next is work.
Absolutely. But I feel, yeah, it's going to be work, but it seems like with you, um, your future is still extremely bright because you have so many characteristics that are going to add on to where you are today. For instance, I can see that if you're able to identify and empathize with people who's going through a tough time because they've been injured or they're at a down spot in their career, you can relate to such an extent that now you are a leader in the field that you decided to work in, and now you're able to open doors potentially for other young people who may have had experiences like yours, who have a similar desire to get to some place. And so you're a leader. You're going to be somebody who, not only you've opened doors already, but you're somebody who's going to open more doors in the future. And that's really what I'm seeing today. It seems like, yeah, work is next, but continuing to be an excellent role model for others is also at play here. Those are my thoughts. So as you transition into the real world, do you plan on starting a family, or what are your thoughts about building other aspects of your life?
Yeah, I think I'd like to get my profession underway, right? Get a couple practice years in before I start to consider something along those lines. And once I can get that established and have this nice foundation, then I can start to venture out and so I have had some offers to be like on board of trustees for foster youth programs, mainly because there's not a lot of individuals who are on these boards who've had success through education. So they, it's a big aspect, definitely wanting to give back to the community that's helped give back to me.
Being extremely focused on the life that you're building for yourself is nothing short of commendable. And I just see that as honorable and really, really great. What is the legacy that you want to leave before you leave Earth? What's the legacy that you want to leave?
That's a good question. I think, not judging someone by what they've gone through, right? Or these negative stigmas that are associated with things. Like seeing the potential in people is something that I'm hoping that, when I leave this earth, us as a society can do better.
What do you think is the greatest thing that was done for you? That
track and field.
Yeah. So for young people out there who might be in the system, you think that one of the best ways to help them grow into a better life would be to get them involved in sports?
Finding an outlet that works for them, right? That gives them that release, that where they don't have to bottle it in, where they can do something that's going to exert all those emotions that you don't know how to process.
Mm-hmm. Any tips for people who are in grad school right now, just now getting into it? Any tips for them?
Woo! Yeah, it's everything in grad school. Grad school is foundational. It's it's not the bare minimum, but there's so much more to learn even after you get out. So you really have to master the content that's being presented to you.
Okay, so a lot of studying,
a
lot of rereading, and just a lot of analyzing the content.
Yeah, not being afraid to ask for help, right?
Mm-hmm. Did you have any tutors?
Yeah, USC, in our first year, they offered tutoring for students who wanted it. And so I was tutored when I was an undergraduate. And then I took up the role of wanting to be a 2D again. So, yeah, I got tutored my first year at SC.
Okay. All right. Those are all good things to know, man. Okay, so I just got a few questions to ask you as round third base here. I've had a great time talking to you tonight. Thank you to everybody who's been dropping comments and reactions in the chat. We've been seeing them, and it means a lot for our conversation. What is survival to you?
Yeah, survival. So wake the next day and take a deep breath and reflect on everything you've undergone and what you've surpassed, and being able to know that there's still so much in front of you that you have to be able to process everything and reflect on your abilities, I think is key for survival. Is, you have to be able to know this is where I've come from and this is where I'm going and this is how I'm going to get there. And today's going to be the day to help transition into getting there.
Did you ever vision board? Did you ever like draw out or write out your future? Did you ever do that?
Yeah, I had my vision board in my room with a Acura NSX right up on there. The doctoral degree wasn't on there. I had mentors who told me that I was capable of achieving that. And, they pushed me to go do it. And so I'm very grateful for them.
If people look at your profile, there is a picture of a Back to the Future looking vehicle. It has two mirrors, kind of like sticking out of it, like two.
Oh, yeah.
What's up with that vehicle? Was that your car? What kind of car was that? What was going on?
Yeah, that's a 1989 Honda Civic wagon. So there was a phase in my life where my friends, right? So I'm in college and my friends are getting into their own hobbies, and one of their hobbies was cars. So I got into cars because I wanted to have a way to connect with my friends. And through that, I was able to collect a bunch of, we call them accessory parts or hard to access or rare parts from Japan. And, ended up building cars. And so that's one of my my hobbies on the side is building and working on cars. So that's my 1989 Honda Civic wagon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now, real quick, what do you think about the direction that cars are going in now? The way that they're changing technologically. Do you like it? Do you love it, or do you dislike it?
I think it's awesome that we're finding more ways in order to power cars. I hope we don't get rid of gasoline because I don't want to put an electric motor inside those cars.
Right.
I like, I really like what Toyota is doing with their cars and what Honda's doing. Ford, I was on the road the other night and seen an electric Hummer,
Yeah.
and I was driving behind it. And I know my cars, and I couldn't figure out, like, is this a Toyota Tundra? Like, what's going on with this thing?
Yeah.
That front grille just said Hummer, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome that
Yeah.
technology is catching up to where we don't have to be so reliant on fossil fuels.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You thought it was a little dog, but it was a big dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got 15 seconds left in the show. What is success to you?
Success comes from within, and being content with where you're at, but also being hungry for more, knowing that you have potential. And that's something that my mentors had to drill into me, is that you have potential.
That's
You
right.
have potential. Never stop. You always have potential.
That's right. What is greatness to you?
Being able to influence and help others to achieve their goals. Not being selfless is definitely part of it. Being able to have someone come to you with their concerns and their worries, and you being able to handle them and guide them.
Mich Hamlin, I want to let you know I've listened to your story today. I love and respect the way that you were able to keep your eyes on the prize, move forward, and continue to grow. I'm giving you respect today while you're here with us, and I'm giving you a crown today. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We're giving you a crown today while you're still living. And we are letting the world know that you, Mich Hamlin, you are America's next motivator.
Awesome. Thank you, Cedric.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by today, all right?
Fight on.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do is stop by and pick it up.